We're in Judges 8, 1-3. This is what we call complaining in the ranks, rebellion in the ranks, whatever you want to call it. Gideon has to face murmuring, complaining of the children of Israel. And we have to see how he solved it. Okay, so it's very interesting. We're going to work our way through it. Let me read Judges 8, 1-3. Now remember, this is right after the battle. Okay? And they pursued them down to the river. And it says, the men of Ephraim said to him, why have you served us thus? We're in Judges 8, verse 1, Karen. Verse 1. That thou callest us not when thou wentest out to fight with the Midians. Excuse me. And they did chide with him sharply. What's that say? That says that the tribe of Ephraim came to Gideon and says, how come you didn't call us to the battle? And the word chide means they're upset. They're murmuring. They're complaining. How come you didn't let us be a part of this? Okay, so we're going to investigate what's going on here.
You know, they've been murmuring since they left Egypt.
Well, that's true. They're a murmuring people. Moses had his fill one time, and he just went to God and says, I'm done. These people, I just can't guide them anymore.
It's like, I know what's under that. There's some dog food over there. I want some dog food.
You heard about that. Yeah, I told you all that Sunday.
That's funny.
I got a solution to that. Later
Oh,
I'll tell you.
okay. Tell me later. I'm all ears. And he said to them, now this is Gideon, what have I done now in comparison of you? Is not the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the vintage of Abiezer? Now we'll talk about that. God has delivered into your hands the princes of Midian, Oreb and Zeb. And what was I able to do in comparison of you? Then their anger was abated toward him when he said that. So there's a change of attitude. We need to find out what's going on. What did he say? What did he mean by this? So I wrote here, who murmured? It's the tribe of Ephraim that murmured. Okay, so that's the answer to the first one, in case you missed that. What was their complaint? You didn't call us into the battle. We didn't have a part in it. How come we were left out? How come I didn't get the dog food? No. You had to be there for that one. How did Gideon deal with it? Now that's the $1 million question. So let's look at verse 2, and I'll kind of unpack it a little bit, and then we're going to keep going for some background information. He says in verse 2, what have I done now in comparison of you? Is not the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the vintage of Abiezer? Well, here's the background on that. Abiezer was the great-grandfather of this guy Gideon. He's of the tribe of Manasseh. So what he's saying is this. Didn't you guys glean a lot more than we did? That's the bottom line. You Ephraimites, you were called into battle because, remember verse 24 of the previous chapter?
Yeah.
When they were all fleeing, he calls Ephraim and says, help us, go down by the river. And the word that was used there was come down against the Midianites, take before them the waters. In other words, cut them off at the pass. You have the easiest job. They're all running and they can only cross at certain points. Stand there and just kill them. And take the bounty. Take whatever they have. Take their swords, take their horses. What an easy job they had. Because the army it was like a bottleneck. It came down to one spot where they could cross, and they're just there. So that's the picture that Gideon says. He says to them, what have I done in comparison of you? Is not the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the vintage of Abiezer? Here's the deal. Manasseh, that's what Abiezer stands for. He's the great-grandfather. All we did was blow trumpets and they killed each other. You guys got to stand at the pass and reap all the benefits. You got their swords, you got all their horses, you got all the goods, and it was easy for you. So what he's saying in verse 2 is, what have I done in comparison? You guys got the best part of the battle.
And they got the two princes.
And then in verse 3, he says, you even got to kill the enemy. You had the privilege of going after the enemy. How easy was that? We didn't even get to do that. All right, so how did Gideon deal with it? Well, let me just,
That they had it better than the other people.
yeah, he brought out probably the truth. You guys are complaining that you weren't called into battle, but look, you got the better part. All right, so let's go to the background, because we'll talk about this a little bit later. Who were the 4 tribes that were called into battle? Go back to chapter 6, verse 35. When Gideon was filled with the Spirit of God, that's verse 34. Everybody see it there? Judges 6:34. He sent messengers, here they are. Manasseh, Asher, Zebulun, Naphtali. Now there are 12 tribes, but he only called 4. So let's keep that in mind. That's the background. For this battle, only 4 tribes were called. How many gathered? Go to chapter 7, verse 3. You have to do some math. And what is it? 32,000. You had 22,000 and 10,000. Remember he said if the people that are scared, they can go home. All right, so how many were left after the scared ones went home? 10,000. That's chapter 7, verse 3. What's God doing here? He's whittling down the numbers. He only called 4 tribes out of 12. And of those 4, he's starting to whittle down the numbers. From 32,000 to 10,000. Then he whittles it even more. How many were left to fight after God reduced the number at the stream? 300. Now, think a minute. Why do you think Gideon, under the influence of the Spirit of God, only called 4 tribes? What if he had called all 12? They'd have this huge number that God would have to whittle down, right? All right, just think along with me. He only called 4, and God did the whittling. God's in charge here. All right, who did Gideon call for help as the battle progressed? He calls 1 tribe, Ephraim. He says, come help us. I need you to go down by the river and cut them off at the pass and finish them off right there at the river. You're going to have the easiest part, but you're going to benefit tremendously. All right. I want to show you something here. There's some sibling rivalry going on between Ephraim and Manasseh. I don't know if you know this. Ephraim and Manasseh were both the sons of Joseph. Okay, Joseph is one of the 12 sons, but he's not one of the tribes. Remember what happened? Levi was one of the tribes, one of the sons, but he didn't inherit land. So think about it. There's 12 tribes. Levi, I'll put him way over here on the end, he's not allowed to inherit land. So one of them is Joseph. Joseph isn't a tribe because his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, took the 10th and 11th, or 11th and 12th place. I know that sounds a little hard to figure out, but follow with me. Manasseh and Ephraim are not the sons of Jacob, sons of Joseph. They're the grandkids. But they were brought in because Joseph didn't inherit and Levi didn't. Joseph's son. And how were they brought in? Well, there's this interesting thing in Genesis 48 that Joseph brings his 2 kids that were born in Egypt to an Egyptian wife, brings them in, and Jacob blesses them and brings them into the inheritance of the 12. They become tribes at that point. But there's something interesting that happened. Now let me express how the blessing goes. You see this in other places. The one who is the oldest gets to stand at the right side of the blesser. So here's Jacob. He has a right hand and a left hand. Okay? Look here, guys. Right, left. The oldest would stand at the right and the younger at the left. That's how they were blessed. So Joseph brings his two boys in, and he puts the older at the one side, the younger at the other. You know what Jacob does? He switches hands, and he blesses them. Why did he do that? He knew something that others didn't know. Somehow God directed him to not put his right hand of blessing on the oldest. The oldest was Manasseh. Put it on Ephraim, the younger. And his left hand of blessing went on Manasseh. Now, if you're Joseph, you're standing there going, whoa, that's not right. Whoa, hold on. But that's what Jacob did. So what happened? Manasseh didn't get the right hand of blessing. He got the left hand of blessing. Ephraim becomes the largest tribe, Manasseh a small one. That's the way God worked it out. So what happens is you find that there's this sibling rivalry going on because these two kids grow up and then they're fathers of tribes and all that. And there's another place later on in Judges that we'll get to later that shows you the rivalry in its full extent. But for now, just believe me, they had this rivalry. It could be that here's Manasseh, or Gideon. He's of the tribe of Manasseh. He didn't get the blessing. Ephraim is the big tribe who got the blessing. When he goes into battle under the leadership of the Spirit led him to call 4 tribes, but not Ephraim. So here's Ephraim going, yo, what are you leaving us out for? We're the large tribe. Well, it could be that's the way God led, because he didn't want a large tribe to be involved from the beginning, because he was going to whittle them down. Are you all following me here? All right, so look at what I have here. Number 1, Jacob blesses Ephraim. He's the second born, but he's the one that's the right hand goes over and hits him because of the way they were standing. And Manasseh, the left, he's the firstborn, but he gets the left hand of blessing. All right, just thought I'd point that out. Number 2, which one was larger, Ephraim or Manasseh? Well, if you look at the book of Numbers, Ephraim is much larger than Manasseh. Just by the sheer amount of fighting men that they had, they're almost twice the size. Huge. Ephraim was the large tribe, Manasseh was the small. Now, let's go to drawing some conclusions. Let's go back to Judges chapter 8. God is the one who's pulling this move off, this battle. Remember, it was they caused confusion in the camp and they killed each other and running around. What did the tribe of Manasseh have to do? What did Gideon have to do? They just blew the trumpet and let the torch go, and God did the rest. But then when the ones that were left and were still alive, they go running toward the river because they came from the other side of the river. The Midianites were on the other side. So they head toward the river let's get out of town. Question I have here, what do you think the reason for their complaint is? If you were an Ephraimite, you were blessed. You got the right hand of blessing from Father Jacob, grandfather Jacob. You are the largest of the tribes, and you weren't called until cleanup. What do you think your complaint would be? Give me some ideas.
You're kind of a diva, maybe, you know?
It's power.
Just like, yeah.
Well, they want notoriety, glory. Now it
Could
brings
be.
glory, it brings, well, he said riches, but it also brings the status.
Yeah.
Ephraim's leader would have, battle status.
Well, it's kind of like
But
not,
there's a rivalry, sure.
kind of like not inviting your brother to the party.
Yeah.
You know, having a party and not inviting your brother.
Now, there were 8 other tribes that weren't invited, or 7 other, besides Ephraim.
But they have that familial relationship too.
But they have this little thing going on that they're very sensitive. You know, Proverbs says, a brother offended is harder to win than, I believe, a walled city, something like that. Proverbs 18:19. Let me read it for you, because I don't have it memorized.
Your family the worst.
Yeah. Proverbs 18:19. Write it down on your paper, because it is true. Family members. Proverbs 18, what is it? 19. A brother offended is harder to win than a strong city. Their contentions are like the bars of a castle. Wow. Have any of you had that experience where family members get offended and, you know, anyone else you could say, hey, let's talk about families like, It's tough. It's tough when you're dealing with family. Or church family, yeah. Yeah. All right, so why do you think Gideon called some for the first time and then others the second time? Just the thought. Well, God was directing him. He was filled with the Spirit of God, and he called out for the 4 tribes. We know that. And then later on, he calls for Ephraim to come. Why didn't he just call them all at the same time? Say, hey, guys, this is a national war. Let's all get in on this.
Maybe to step in fresher people to finish it up.
Yeah.
Well, God didn't want it. I mean, God intended up only you should be them 300 to begin with. I think it's been around.
Yeah. Yeah, in the plan of God, God wanted to receive the glory, not man. Maybe God knew that the Ephraimites had this little issue with pride. They're the largest, they're the strongest, and allowed them to just sit on the sidelines for a while. Hey, but what's wrong with everyone having a part? Do you have to always be the central figure? So Ephraim here, remember their question, verse 1. Why have you served us this way? Why didn't you call us? Like as if you should have really known that you need us, right? Hey, we're the blessed brother, Gideon.
Well, this
But-
escape pass also, you know, these guys are fleeing, and he's leaving this up to Ephraim to finish off the job, which
Yeah.
is mopping up. But also, there's some trust there. I mean, Ephraim could have just went, I don't want to guard this. This is crazy.
Right.
Or whatever. So
Okay, but
there's some trust there that
Yeah.
he's going to get the job done.
Ephraim gets all the loot.
Right.
Is that
Yeah.
not part of the blessing?
It is.
It is.
And that's what Gideon says to him.
And then they also get the glory for killing the people, not
Right.
mopping up,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
for
Right.
killing them.
Part of the strategy.
So is there any part of this war that's more important than another?
Seems not to be.
No.
Probably not,
All
right?
parts and pieces,
We're all working
like-
together.
But the people who actually do, like she says, the killing, you know.
Right.
and they're
Think
getting
about it.
greater glory.
For history, now we know they were the ones that had the heads of Zeb and the other guy, you know. Ephraim did it. Well, yeah, but small Manasseh, they blew the trumpets. And they got the people that, yeah. So is there any one part of it that's more important than the other? No.
Can't be.
And that's what Gideon is saying in verse 3, or verse 2. He says, what have I done in comparison to you? What are we comparing here for? This is all, and look at verse 3. Here's the final answer. Gideon deals with the complaint by God delivered into your hands the prince. Look, this is a God thing. Why are we arguing about what part we had in it? God's the one who did it. So Gideon is masterful because he's dealing with murmuring of people who it seems like have a pride issue due to their background and due to, you know, their complaint. And what's he do? He turns it back to God. Look, let's not compare your job with my job and who did this. God did this. That's it. It's over. God did it. So look at verse 3 again.
They know that by now, though.
Oh, you know, how many battles had God won for them?
But do we know it? There's the example.
But you know how quickly we forget.
Just forget. There you go. One generation.
We got to be reminded. Boy, did you guys see the sunset this afternoon? It was unbelievable. We were coming up 89 and toward the west. It was like, I even yelled, JoJo was behind me. I said, JoJo, look out the window. And she's, oh, it was beautiful. We need to be reminded of God.
I thank him every evening for the
Yeah.
beautiful, just like a painting every evening. They paint it.
Yeah.
This guy is so good.
So I think what Gideon was doing here, if we can kind of just wrap it up, he was turning their attention away from the petty stuff that they were arguing about. And he didn't come down hard on them. He just said, why are we comparing one to another? Verse 3, God has delivered into your hands princes of Midian, Oreb and Zeb. And what was I able to do in comparison to you? In other words, why are we comparing? I had a part in it, you did. And then verse 3, then their anger was abated toward him when he said that. So it seems like that's what they needed to hear, to what the young people say, chill, so they could chill a bit. You know, they were all upset, but hearing that calmed them down. You're right. God did it. Let's just be thankful for what he did. So let's apply this to us. We've already drawn some conclusions. And by the way, thank you for working on this, you guys. I know some of you were like blowing steam, you know, and you just couldn't get the answer, ready to walk out. But thank you for being patient. But what are the conclusions here? What happens if we have murmuring? You think someone else got a better job or more recognition than you? What do? Just go to God and say, God, take it away. Take away that attitude. Take me out of the picture. I want to see you at work, right? This is a God thing. Let's see him doing the work. Once we start putting ourselves into the picture, because the word that the Ephraimites use, look at verse 1. Why have you not served us? Us. They put themselves into the picture. And Gideon takes himself out of the picture and reminds him that God is the one. That's verse 3. So let's not be like Ephraim and stick ourselves in the picture and make it all about us. It's not. It's about God. And what if he asks us to do some insignificant thing like mopping up or standing at the pass and tripping people or as they try and cross the river? I don't know. What if he asked you to do something insignificant? Would you stand back and say, yeah, but I'm better than this? They need to ask somebody else, not me.
Or be glad he asked you.
Or be glad, yeah. So there's a lot of good stuff in here. These judges dealt with life where the rubber meets the road. I know they didn't have rubber tires back then, but whatever, where the wheel hits the road. This was real for them. And the way he handled it was masterful because he was led by the Spirit of God. Now, that doesn't mean that every time a leader speaks, people would just go, oh, you're right, or right, or we're sorry. Sometimes it's a long process, right? Realizing that maybe your attitude wasn't perfect or wasn't right. All right, any comments? Anybody want to add to this?
I just love this. There's so much in this little section that I just step right over and blown off. It's nice to get all the meat out of there.
Well, it's nice to know the real meaning of what we're reading.
Well, just
That's
get,
why I appreciate this.
and you get the
Being
meat.
able to understand
Cool.
the importance and understand the history of not just the Old Testament, whatever that means, and read Matthew and that's it. You know.
Well, the Old Testament is patterns for the New Testament. And your sermon about Peter's speech or sermon, when he was the person used to heal, really was the same sort of thing. He stepped back and said, it's not me.
Yeah, that's true. Remember, you look at me as if some power came from me. It didn't come from me. So a true leader will reflect God, not draw attention. Yeah. But we are sinful creatures, and there's something about pride that fans our, there's something, how should I say it? It fans our evil desires to be seen, be heard, and we need to fight against that. What's that?
Have the biggest mansion,
Yeah.
hills, everybody can see you.
We constantly need to fight against that.
Yes.
And Gideon's focus here was God did it. So let's be thankful. Okay, Ephraim. Yeah, I'm the firstborn, you're secondborn, you got the blessing, I understand that. But God did it. Let's not get involved in petty comparisons.
We've never had that problem in here.
Oh, never.
None of these
No.
people.
We're all
No, it's-
perfect, right?
No, we're preaching to the choir. It's other people that aren't here. Well, they're not here.
Right. All right. Well, I tell you what, we're going to have a prayer time now. I'm going to turn this off because